Hi, I'm Marcus Winters. I'm an associate professor at the Boston University Wheelock College of Education and Human Development, and I'm the faculty director of the Wheelock Educational Policy Center. I'm presenting my paper, which is joint work with Jesse Bruin and Scott Imberman, titled Regulatory Arbitrage in Teacher Hiring and Retention, Evidence from Massachusetts Charter Schools. So we know from a large body of research and really simple common sense that teachers are a school's most important asset. And yet, collective bargaining agreements and state laws often prohibit traditional public schools from administrative actions that really could improve the quality of their teachers, like removing and replacing low-performing teachers or hiring talented teachers who've not yet obtained a license. In contrast, flexibility in teacher employment practices is among the defining features for charter schools. But do charter schools take advantage of their flexibility to remove ineffective teachers and to retain effective teachers? So in this paper, we're using longitudinal data from Massachusetts to compare teacher attrition patterns in charter schools and traditional public schools. Massachusetts really is an interesting place to consider this topic because it's home to an expansive and really very effective charter school sector. We first calculate each teacher's effectiveness relative to other teachers in their school. And then we track whether teachers exit their school and also where they go after they leave. So this figure illustrates the relationship between teacher quality and the probability of attrition in a given year. So the purple line represents the estimate for charter school teachers, the yellow lines for traditional public school teachers. And for better comparison, we put the teachers into performance bins. So the lowest performing teachers are towards the left and the higher performing teachers are on the right for each respective figure. And overall, what we see is that teacher attrition is substantially higher in charter schools than in traditional public schools. And we also see that the relationship between teacher quality and attrition in charter schools, it's U-shaped. So this indicates that charter schools are disproportionately losing their least effective teachers and also their best teachers, their most effective teachers as well. And what we also see that there's little relationship between teacher quality and attrition within the traditional public schools. So overall, we have a really intriguing pattern of results. So as we saw in the original figure, we find that charter schools differentially lose their highest and their lowest performing teachers. Interestingly, this U-shaped pattern that we see for charter schools, it's similar in both the highest performing charter schools and the lowest performing charter schools as well. And that result implies that teacher retention and attrition really doesn't seem to be a primary driver of charter school impacts on student outcomes. When we then go on to show that among teachers who leave charter schools, the lowest performing teachers tend to no longer be teaching in Massachusetts. They just leave the data set altogether. But the higher performing teachers are disproportionately likely to move into a traditional public school. We also show that charter schools are disproportionately unlicensed. But when they do eventually obtain a license during their teaching career at the charter school, they very often then move into a traditional public school. So taken together, this pattern of results suggests that charter schools act as a filtering mechanism for teacher quality by inducing their worst teachers to leave the education sector altogether, while also providing a pathway for their best teachers to enter the traditional public school system. And intuitively, we can think of charter schools applying a form of what we call regulatory arbitrage. So while traditional public schools impose an entry barrier, so in this case it's licensure, and pay a relatively higher wage, charter schools are not subject to these requirements, and so they're free to hire unlicensed teachers at a lower wage. So this is similar to the way that firms like Uber or Lyft, for example, take advantage of loopholes in taxi regulations to enter the personal transportation market and pay lower wages to do so. And they're undercutting the highly regulated incumbent firms. But the main difference between the market for taxis and the market for students is that charter schools are restricted in their supply. So for example, Massachusetts has a strict cap on the number of charter schools that can operate. So thus, unlicensed prospective teachers can use the charter school system to explore their taste for teaching. They can give it a try. And those who are not successful eventually leave teaching And those who are successful and they want to stay in the classroom, they're more likely to then commit to that fixed cost necessary to obtain a license and move into the higher paying traditional public school sector. So interestingly, though we find little support for the idea that targeted teacher attrition is a primary driver of charter school effectiveness, our results suggest that charter schools might also benefit traditional public schools by providing an alternative pathway for unlicensed teachers to enter the labor force and then sorting those who are successful into the traditional public school system. And this pattern suggests that charter schools might create a positive externality for local public schools by increasing the average quality of prospective teachers that are available to them.